Could you kindly stand as we welcome the Premier? Okay. Kindly be seated. A pleasant morning to all and welcome to yet another edition of the Premier's monthly press conferences. It is indeed quite happy, we're indeed quite happy that you have joined us this morning in our monthly exercise of openness and transparency. For those who are joining us for the very first time, the format for this morning press conference is as follows. The Premier will make his statement, and then members of the press corps will be given the opportunity to ask their questions. In so doing, you're kindly asked to give your name and the organization which you represent. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Premier of Nevis, Mark A.G. Brantley.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel, and good morning to the viewing and listening public. Good morning to the members of the press who are here assembled, and welcome to another of our monthly press conferences. This was a commitment that we made over 3 years ago when we campaigned that if elected we would have introduced this monthly press conference. I feel quite proud that we've been able to keep that commitment. It is yet another indication of our seriousness as a government about our good governance agenda and the need to be open and transparent. And what a better way than to be here with the press and to have members of the press ask their questions. And we have had some good times here in the past. I think that should continue, where members of the press should fearlessly ask whatever it is they wish to ask. Let me start today by congratulating Division footballer, Mr. Zacchaeus Smith of Craddock Road, on his selection to the St. Kitts Nevis national football team. That, I think, is a matter for celebration, since we know that in the Federation, St. Kitts has traditionally dominated football. And, of course, therefore, we are quite proud of young Zakis, and we certainly wish him all the best. He's presently on a scholarship to the Louisiana State University, and the St. Kitts Nevis football team departed for the Dominican Republic on the 21st of March. Mr. Jamia Claxton, our own Director of Sports, has traveled with the team as the team's manager, and Mr. Leroy Junjun Sweeney as the equipment manager. And so we wish them all very well. Superintendent Lyndon David has been transferred to St. Kitts to take up duties there. Superintendent David has been replaced in Nevis as head of Division C by Superintendent James Sutton. Superintendent David would have taken up duties in Nevis in May of 2018, and I would want to extend my very strong commendation to him for his leadership here in Nevis and to wish him well in his future endeavors. I look forward to meeting Superintendent James Sutton and wish him also well as he leads the effort here in Nevis in relation to the fight against crime. Many of you, ladies and gentlemen, would have heard of a difficulty where at a hotel property here, 8 persons, members of a group, vacationing there, left the property in an unauthorized way. And 2 made their way into Charlestown, and another 6 made their way to a popular night spot on the beach, there at Peonage Beach. The result of that was that those 8 persons were charged. I'm told they went before the magistrate, they were convicted and fined. And of course, the difficulty was that some of our people who came into contact with them, those people had to be isolated, quarantined, if you will, in order to ensure that they were safe and that they could not have contracted the COVID-19 virus. It has caused clearly some great discomfort to people, great inconvenience to people, and I would want to apologize to them for that, but to tell them that these things happen where individuals are irresponsible, as these certainly 8 individuals were. Those 8 individuals destroyed the holiday for their group, and also, of course, created a problem with so many of our own people who did nothing wrong. They were merely out having a night out, and these reckless people came into contact with them. I believe they've been dealt with via the court, and I am advised that by this weekend, those individuals who were forced into quarantine should be out once, of course, they test negative. I would wish to assure them that the tests and the cost for the tests will not be borne by them, and that we will find some way to address that, because I do not think that they should ought to bear any additional burden. And so we're dealing with that, and I certainly apologize to them for this massive inconvenience to them. Imagine people would have been out of work, people would have been confined, and this is, of course, a difficult situation. It, however, brings me to the next issue that I wanted to raise, and that is the issue of vaccination. And one of the ironies, forgive me, one of the ironies of this whole situation was that if the people who were at that particular establishment were vaccinated, that is, our people who were there, nigh 40 of them, I'm told, if they were vaccinated, then we would feel a lot safer, because the vaccine, of course, protects you, the vaccinated individual, from COVID-19. It limits considerably the chance of contracting it, and if you contract it by some chance, then what it also does, it ensures that you do not get particularly sick, and certainly it protects you against death. And so we want again to send a clarion call to our people to get vaccinated. I will get to that a bit more later when I get to some statistics, but this is again a good reason for us to get vaccinated. Our people want to go out, we want to socialize, we want to go to the parties, we want to go to the bars, we want to go to the restaurants. Get vaccinated, protect yourself, and allow us to get to that magic 70% where we as a people can open up with greater comfort and with greater assurance that we are safe. Yesterday, the Nevis Island Assembly would have met, and we would have passed some legislation One, an amendment to the Solid Waste Management Authority ordinance to allow us to implement some rate increases that we had spoken to in the budget address of December of last year, and which we said would come into effect in April of this year. We have dealt with those. In addition, we would have passed the legislation which governs and gives us now the authority to license and to change the fees for licensing for those operating in the financial services sector. And lastly, we would have passed the Nevis Film Industry Ordinance, which was a significant milestone and historic event because it marked the first piece of legislative architecture for the film industry that we are talking about. And that film industry, I'm proud to say, continues apace. We are very pleased that in our effort to diversify the Nevis economy, that we were able to negotiate with and bring to the island of Nevis MSR Media. I want to go on record again to thank Mr. Martinez, the man behind MSR Media, but also to thank our local team, Ms. Jadine Yard, the NTA CEO, that is the CEO of the Nevis Tourism Authority, Mr. Colin Dorr, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and Mr. Jacob Katzman, who has been assisting us on the NEPA platform, the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency platform. All three worked together and brought MSR Media to our shores. MSR Media is now wrapping up the filming of their first film, 1 year off, and I'm advised that by the middle of April, they will launch their second film. And they have now committed from an initial commitment of 2 films. They're now saying that they will do 6 films here on the island of Nevis. People are being employed. I'm told some 32 locals are employed. I'm told that some 22 or thereabouts units at the Hamilton have been rented for the rest of the year. I'm told about 6 villas have been rented for the rest of the year. Car rental companies have cars rented out for the rest of the year. I believe that the trickle-down effect, which they've calculated at about $1 million every 3 to 4 months, that is going to be very significant. In an environment now where jobs are scarce, where COVID has decimated our economy, I believe that the government should rightly be congratulated on its efforts to diversify the Nevis economy. I feel additionally proud that MSR has indicated that they will be filming on our sister island of St. Kitts. They did 1 scene on St. Kitts for 1 year off, and they said, for this new movie, they will be doing 4 days of filming on St. Kitts. This new movie is called Assailant, and they will be doing 4 days on St. Kitts, and I welcome that. The reason I welcome that is because I think that for a long time we have seen St. Kitts or Nevis. Nevis or St. Kitts. We have seen our 2 islands in silos, and we have been competing with each other, sometimes I think to the detriment of both. I remind, as I did yesterday in the Parliament, that when the Four Seasons Resort launched luxury accommodation and luxury tourism here in the Federation, and it was 30 years ago and still is 30 years later the benchmark of luxury in the region, that when it launched that many Kittitians, our brothers and sisters, came over and found work in Nevis. Many got their start in the industry on the island of Nevis, and that is as it should be. 30 years later, the Park Hyatt came to St. Kitts, and St. Kitts got their first foray into the luxury tourism market. And many of our Nevisian brothers and sisters decided to go to St. Kitts and work. And I was saddened when I heard some of the criticism of my government to say that people were going to St. Kitts to find work. Some, perhaps with convenient memories, didn't remember that people from St. Kitts would come to Nevis also to find work. Even now, I go to St. Kitts on Mondays for the cabinet, and as I get on the water taxi to go to St. Kitts for the cabinet, there I ordinarily run into persons coming from St. Kitts, coming over to Nevis, and they're coming over to Nevis to work in our financial services sector, in other sectors. Here we are now where the Nevis Island Administration has negotiated and brought to Nevis a film company. And that film company is now saying that they will do some filming in St. Kitts. And our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts, therefore, will benefit from this effort. Indeed, long before Nevis started to benefit from this effort, St. Kitts was already benefiting, because they brought in over 48 people as crew, and the majority of them were quarantined at the Marriott on St. Kitts. I say that because I think it is important that we start to understand that development that is meaningful is national development. And that good things happening on the island of St. Kitts translate into good things happening in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And the reverse is true. That good things happening on the island of Nevis translates into good things happening in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. We must see our country as one country. And wherever opportunities are, if they are in St. Kitts, in the mountains of Phillipses, anybody should be able to go there and access those opportunities. And if they are in Nevis, in the mountains of Rollins, anybody should be able to go there and access, because it's your country. It's your country. And I am proud that Nevis has demonstrated the type of leadership that is necessary in this difficult time to bring a brand new industry here. And so yesterday was historic, because we, in passing the Nevis Film Industry Ordinance, took the first step in the history of this country to create a legislative framework for a film industry. And so yesterday, I think, was an important step, and one that we will continue to move forward. Life is all about forward momentum, and I'm delighted that we have been able to attract MSR Media, and I anticipate that in the fullness of time we will attract others as well. As I'm talking about diversification, and the press month after month, you ask me difficult questions, of course, about the economy, about where we're going, what are we doing about jobs. And it has become customary for those, indeed, those in a robust democracy such as ours, opposed to this government, who continue to argue and say people aren't working, almost as if we are responsible for what has happened in terms of COVID and the natural and necessary results of an economic crisis that has resulted from the health crisis that COVID posed. But we understand that we are government, and when you're in government, you take the good, you take the bad. And as Premier of Nevis, I have never been somebody to jump up and put my hand up when good times have come and take credit, and then turn my back when bad times are here and say that that is not my responsibility. Because even though we did not cause COVID, we did not bring COVID, we have not and are not the architects of what has happened in relation to COVID, we have a responsibility as government to face it and to make the necessary adjustments and bring into being the necessary policy prescriptions that will assist our island moving forward. That is why we are elected. In that vein, in addition to the movie industry that we have started here on the island, we have also seen a considerable investment and uptick in terms of manufacturing. That for us is very important, ladies and gentlemen. We have, of course, had here furniture being made. We have artisans in Nevis who are now the principal kitchen manufacturers in the Federation, who are doing luxury kitchens, not only here in Nevis, at developments such as Four Seasons, but also in St. Kitts at developments like Christophe Harbour. We have those who are making doors and moldings. In fact, I was very happy to hear that one of our manufacturers here in Nevis was the principal manufacturer of doors and moldings for the Kittish Hill development in St. Kitts. So our people have been responding positively to the environment that the government has created for local investment to flourish. I am very pleased that in addition to furniture, kitchens, moldings, doors, that our people are now manufacturing masks here on the island of Nevis. And I would want to commend those involved because they're manufacturing masks, they say, for export. And what I like about it is that they have brought down the price considerably, because the masks they're selling for $1 EC per mask. I got in touch with a colleague in Grenada who said that they pay $5 EC there for a mask. And so I am delighted that we now are manufacturing masks on a large scale on the island of Nevis. I'm told that the capacity of the plant is 30,000 masks per day. So that is significant. We are also, and just yesterday I took the opportunity to visit a new manufacturing venture at Long Point that is now doing chain link fencing. And so we are now producing chain link fencing on the island of Nevis as well, in an environment where, of course, we see construction that is growing and has been largely incentivized by this government. We are seeing that those who support the construction industry are stepping up to the plate. And I wish all of those manufacturers well. I think we are onto something good, where we're seeing some niche manufacturing being developed on the island of Nevis, creating jobs, creating activity, but most importantly, providing us with a much-needed diversification of our economy. The press and the public hear me talking all the time about diversification. It is because COVID-19 taught us that the traditional approach to our economy of having all of our eggs in the tourism basket, that cannot work. I suppose we always knew it, but COVID-19 brought it to us most forcefully. And I'm pleased that as I stand here today, in 2021, on the 24th day of March, that we have been able to attract the film industry. We have been able to attract light manufacturing. We have seen a greater emphasis on agriculture. We have seen our construction sector boom with the concessions that we have provided, and that we are seeing now that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. And that people who traditionally would look to tourism are now looking elsewhere. And that, I feel, is to be encouraged and commended. As I mentioned, food security, which has been a major thrust. It has, of course, come to our attention certain allegations concerning the destruction of farms and farming implements on the island of Nevis. This is the third time this year that it has been brought to my attention that farmers have suffered vandalism and or criminality in relation to their crops and in relation to their farming implements. I have said so publicly already, but I would want from this rostrum to say so again, that we as a government condemn unreservedly any criminal actions, any vandalism against our farmers. In fact, we condemn it against anyone. In an environment and in a community where we have been pushing food security, where we have been encouraging farmers, including backyard farmers, through incentives, through free water, free plowing, free land preparation, free seeds, free seedlings, free fertilizer, even free labor, free fencing wire. We have provided so much to our farmers and our farming community that to see wanton destruction of anybody's crops or implements is simply abhorrent. And I don't know what is behind it. Nobody knows the heart of man. But I'm asking those involved in such behavior to cease and desist. And of course I'm asking that those who have suffered any such losses to report these matters to the local police so that an investigation can be done and that the culprits can be brought to justice. I want to be very firm about that there can be no excuse for anyone to vandalize anybody else's property. And especially where food and food security is concerned, we all, I believe, have to condemn that type of approach. And I would want to do so today and do so, as I said, unreservedly. I think that approach is unhelpful and that we must do better as we move forward on the island of Nevis. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go quickly to the Ministry of Health because I have some really good news to report from the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health has acquired a brand new Vitros XT3400 chemistry analyzer. It was purchased last year by my government at a cost of some US $59,000. It has now been commissioned. So we acquired it last year, but it has now been commissioned. And the reason for the delay was the fact that the technicians couldn't come at the time because of the COVID situation. They have now come, and if you're wondering, as I was wondering, what a chemistry analyzer does, it is used to test blood chemistries, which includes blood glucose, cholesterol, liver, and renal functions. The machine replaces an older model which malfunctioned. And why is that important? It's important because prior to the commissioning of this new state-of-the-art machine, our old machine had broken down and we were forced to send tests to St. Kitts. And that, of course, always delays the ability of doctors to know what's wrong with you. So if you went to the hospital and you had an issue and they had to run these tests, glucose, cholesterol, liver, and renal function, they had to take whatever samples and send them over to St. Kitts. Well, I'm pleased to say today that that is no more. And that this Vitros XT3400 chemistry analyzer is now fully commissioned at a cost from your government of $59,000 US. I'm also pleased to advise that we have secured a grant of some $65,744 US from the Japanese government. And that grant is for the purchase of a Cepheid Gene Expert PCR testing machine. Why is that important? That is important because it means that Nevis will now have the capability to do its own PCR testing and therefore to test for COVID-19 here. All the tests that we have been doing up to this point, which is now over a year that the world and the Caribbean and St. Kitts and Nevis have been impacted by COVID, have had to go to St. Kitts. Prior to the testing capacity in St. Kitts, we were sending tests to CARFA in Trinidad. So I just want you to see the progression. We were going first to CARFA in Trinidad. You could imagine the delays. So a man comes in today, he's showing some symptoms, you have to test, send it to, you have to take the samples, send them to Trinidad. We said that was not good enough, and so certain private labs in St. Kitts invested. And we were therefore able to provide testing on the spot in St. Kitts. The JNF hospital in St. Kitts has also invested, and they too will be providing PCR testing there. They have the capacity now. We in Nevis never relented because, again, we feel that rapidity of response in relation to testing is a critical part of treatment. It's a critical part of managing a disease. And so we have not relented, and the Japanese have come to our assistance with a grant of $65,744 US to buy the necessary equipment. Let me go on record to congratulate, of course, the Minister, Junior Minister of Health and Gender, the Honorable Hazel Brantley, who has led the team there. But let me specifically single out the Permanent Secretary, Shalisa Martin, for her work in relation to securing the grant funds from Japan. I do that because I know that the timing was short and that the application process was really handled by her and that she worked really hard to make this happen. And when we have public servants who give their all to serve us, I think they ought to be recognized. And so, P.S. Martin, we congratulate and thank you for your effort in securing the Japanese grant of $65,744 US. I'm also pleased to announce that 3 recently purchased non-contact face recognition thermal scanners will now be added to the list of equipment used for monitoring persons visiting our hospital and traveling through the Vance Amory Airport. These scanners were purchased again by us at a cost of just over $5,000 US. On February 24th, this year, the Ministry of Health and the NIA rolled out their COVID-19 vaccination program. 23 persons got vaccinated that day, which included members of cabinet, frontline workers, and those in public health. To date, a total of 2,131 persons have been vaccinated with the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the vaccine of choice being used here at the moment. 2,131 persons to date, that is as of yesterday. This Saturday, we will be having a special vaccination clinic at the Charlestown Health Center from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. But at any day during the week, that is Monday to Friday, you can go to your health center in your local community and get vaccinated. It only takes a few minutes. And by you taking the initiative, no appointment is necessary. You can just walk into your local health center, get vaccinated. What you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is that you are keeping yourself, your families, your island safe. We are aware that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation in the public sphere. And many people have been saying they're not going to take a vaccine, they don't know what's in the vaccine. One lady told me that it's designed to control people's minds, and you hear all kinds of things. I'm urging our people, please, to let good sense prevail. If you're out of work right now, the best way for you to ensure that we can get back to work and get back to normalcy is to take that vaccine. I will not be surprised that in the very near future you'll have employers saying that if you're not vaccinated, we might not want to consider you for employment. I'm not saying that that will happen. I'm saying I won't be surprised if it does. I wouldn't be surprised. You know why? Because even employers would want to know that their staff is safe and that they themselves are providing an environment that is safe for their customers. But if customers start to say, well, I am not going to go to a particular hotel or a particular restaurant because I don't feel safe, the people there are not vaccinated. I want us to start to think. People are telling me, oh, I'm going to take it, but I'm not ready yet. What is that supposed to mean? Because the reality is that the longer you delay taking that first shot means that it's the longer you'll have to wait, because there's a 8 to 12 week gap between the first shot and the second shot. Now, we have tried, the members of cabinet, I believe the permanent secretary in my ministry here, Mr. Daniel, he was there. All of us took a shot. In fact, I decided I'll take the first vaccine shot in Nevis. And I encouraged my wife to take it with me. And so we were number 1 and number 2. And you know why we did that? We did that because we wanted to demonstrate that we had confidence in it. So I am encouraging our people. People say they want culture armor. A man met me the other day say, when they're going to have long jam again from Gingerland? How are you going to get long jam without a vaccine? It's too risky. How will we get back to our sports, our interprimary, the type of activities that we're accustomed to have, music festival, carnival? How will we be able to go back to our churches in the way that we used to worship? I felt the other day so pleased to see that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control in the United States, has already issued new guidelines saying that people who are vaccinated can get together without masks, without any physical distancing. Because if you're vaccinated and I'm vaccinated, then the chances for us to contract or to give each other COVID are reduced to almost zero. So the answer is vaccination. And I continue to ask our people that if you truly want to think about not just yourself and your health, which is critical, but also your country, to get us back to normal, to get our people working again, to get the hotels open without all this quarantine. Could you imagine what it would be like, ladies and gentlemen of the press, for us to be able to say that quarantine is a thing of the past? Right now, some countries are doing some very clever marketing where they're saying that if people are vaccinated, the people can come once they show proof of vaccination without the need for quarantine. But you can only do that, in my view, safely, based on all that I've been told, when your own local population is also vaccinated. I am pleased that as of yesterday, the reports I saw, that on our march nationally, St. Kitts and Nevis, to get to 70%, we were now at 24%. And that some 7,934 persons across the Federation have been thus far administered the first dose of AstraZeneca. 5,803 persons on St. Kitts and 2,131 persons on Nevis. So we need to get to 70%. We are at 24 at the moment. It means that we have work to do. And I am really enlisting the assistance of the press in this regard to dispel a lot of the discomfort and a lot of the misinformation. I'm calling on all the large employers, the banks, the hotels, to please encourage their staff to get vaccinated. Could you imagine how much more confidence you could have if you're on the front line of a hotel and you're vaccinated and you know that the person, visitor coming in is vaccinated? It means that you have a double layer of protection. And I know that you're tired of hearing me say so, but I will say so anyway, that we are not unaccustomed to vaccinations. Vaccinations aren't anything new. All of us in this room have been vaccinated. Mumps, rubella, measles, chickenpox, tuberculosis, polio, tetanus. You can go on and on and on. Vaccination has been a proven methodology over the years to save lives. And so please, I'm encouraging our people, let us not miss the opportunity to bring Nevis back to normalcy. And the only way we can do that is to ensure that we go out and we encourage others to get vaccinated. The vaccine is free. It's easy. It's available. Yes, some people have had side effects. I haven't had any, thank God. But some have reported that they've had a slight fever. Some have said they've had some chills. Some have said they've had headaches. But those are normal. Any of you with babies or children who you've taken to get vaccinated, to get their shots, you know that they always tell you there may be a slight fever, there may be a headache. So if you take your little 2-year-old to get their shots, why now you're a big man and woman and you say you're not taking any? Let's do what is right. And let's go out and prove. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if St. Kitts and Nevis becomes the first country in the Caribbean to reach that threshold? Man, we'll show open our doors. All are welcome once you're vaccinated. No quarantine. Back to normal. It will be a wonderful thing. And so we encourage you, please, to go out and get vaccinated. The Department of Gender Affairs within the Ministry of Health, in collaboration with the Caribbean Women in Leadership, Civil, and Women in Construction, hosted and will be hosting a number of activities as part of the celebration for International Women's Month. Some activities have gone already, but on the 25th of March, which I think is tomorrow, there's the Women's Month Awards ceremony at NEPAC at 7 p.m., invitations only. Then on the 27th of March, Women in Leadership Forum at the St. Paul's Anglican Church, starting at 9 a.m. And then from the 29th to 31st of March, we have basic home repairs, plumbing. Some 60 women have registered for that particular training. And so women doing plumbing, that's, I think, a good thing. For agriculture, the reports, the Department of Agriculture presents AgroFest 2021, this Friday, March 7th, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. On sale will be local farm produce, roast corn, local meat from the abattoir, agro-processed items, plants, fruit and floral, fish and fish products, as well as local cooked food. Good news, again, through the efforts of the Department of Trade. The Department of Agriculture will be next week making donations of animal feed to livestock farmers. Let me emphasize the word donation. That means free. The East Caribbean Group of Companies in St. Vincent has donated the feed. The container will be here on the 6th of April. It contains 690 bags of feed, 70 bags of layer pellets, 150 bags of layer crumbles, 200 bags of general purpose, 200 bags of pig grower, and 70 bags of dairy ration. An important notice from the Ministry of Agriculture. Just as I spoke earlier about people vandalizing people's farms and condemning that, I also want to condemn the practice that seems to be developing of people watching people plant watching people farm, watching you weed, watching your water, and then come in when the time to reap and reaping your crops. We are seeing an increase in predial larceny. Put that in common parlance, people are stealing people's crops. And we are imploring our public to stop. Agriculture is hard work. I think all of us know that. And it must be devastating for you to work hard. And when your crop finally is coming in, for Mary, Susie, Tom, or Jerry, who have not been there to help you, to simply decide that it is their time to reap. One of the ways to stop predial larceny is for those of you out there who are buying and know that you're buying from people who don't have no farm nowhere and who are not farming anywhere, to stop it. If a man come and wants to sell you tomatoes for $1 a pound, and you know tomatoes are normally $3 a pound, and he's not a farmer, more than likely he can sell it at that price because he stole it. And let us talk plain to each other. We must help each other. And if you're buying stolen products, you're buying stolen food, you are empowering the thief and devastating the farmer. So let us please look after each other. Because that's what it comes down to. Some people like to do things and they say, I didn't know. It's a classic. I didn't know. It was cheap, so I buy it. Think about the effect of that. Please, help our farmers and let us condemn this predial larceny that is emerging. The Department of Youth will be celebrating its Youth Month in April. The theme is Restore the Earth. Restore the Earth. A number of activities are being planned with our young people in mind. Those include a youth beach games, a moonlight walk, and a 30-day Love the Earth challenge. The Youth 12 Impact Awardees for the months of February and March are Jevon Claxton for Information Technology and Giovanni Tyson for Sports Excellence, respectively. And, of course, I congratulate young Jevon and young Giovanni. An important notice for schools. The Ministry of Education is advising that all students attending government primary and secondary schools are required to be at school until Friday, 26th March 2021. That's this Friday. Teachers will continue to report for duty until Thursday, 1st April 2021. Report sheets will be available for collection as of 1st April 2021. Term 2 Easter break for all government primary and secondary schools will end on Friday, 16th April 2021, and all teachers and students are to report for Term 3 on Monday, 19th April 2021. So I hope those dates are clear, that this Friday is the last day of school for the students. The teachers will have to report until Thursday, the 1st of April, and then holidays over on Friday, the 16th of April, and teachers and students report back to school on Monday, the 19th of April. Let me also, from the Ministry of Education, under the leadership of the Honorable Troy Liebert, who has spearheaded this particular effort that I will speak to now, announce that there will be a kite-making workshop for 50 students from across all public and private primary schools on the island. The workshop is being sponsored by the Hamilton Reserve Bank, which was formerly known as the Nevis International Bank and Trust. So Hamilton Reserve Bank is the sponsor, and they're doing a kite-making workshop for 50 primary school students from all across the island. The workshop will run for 3 days, from March 29th to March 31st at the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School. 5 local kite makers will teach the students the skill of kite making from start to finish. Sessions will run from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the 3 days. So, kite making, a tradition that we do not wish to lose, and I commend the Honorable Troy Liebert because he is very passionate about this, and we were able to secure funding, significant funding for this effort from the Hamilton Reserve Bank. Switching to the Ministry of Tourism, just to advise that in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, They will be collaborating to organize a Good Friday kite flying, a tradition here in Nevis. And that kite flying competition will be on Friday, the 2nd of April, starting at, from noon, starting at noon until 6 p.m. The competition will be preceded by a children's kite making workshop, to which I have just spoken. And that workshop again will be at the St. John's Primary School from Monday 29th to Wednesday 31st for 50 primary school students. The categories for the competition include the biggest kite, the best papered kite, and the best flying kite. I hope members of the press here know a little thing about kite and kite flying and kite making. I see young Mr. Cornelius here. You might have bought a kite at the store, Mr. Cornelius, but in my day we used to make them ourselves. And you had to be able to make the loop, and some had what they call a mountain loop, and some had a tugging loop. And these are all things that we did as youngsters. Well, now you can go on Google, I'm sure, YouTube, and find out how to do it. But we are going to be teaching the kids, and we're going to have a competition at the flats on the Good Friday, a traditional Good Friday kite flying. The competition, again, is being sponsored by Hamilton Reserve Bank, and we thank Hamilton Reserve Bank for its generosity. Pinnis Park, our project continues apace. I'm now told, and I always smile when I get these numbers, that we are at 56.2% completion. And we're doing the landscaping at the same time, so the landscaping is at 21% complete. Construction work is now focused on the roof of the visitor center. When completed, the facility will boast a unique lawn-covered roof design, where visitors to the park can actually walk on the roof from one end to the other. Work also continues on the amphitheater, which symbolically includes stonework from both Taiwan and Nevis, a testament to the collaboration between the two countries. An appeal is being made for persons to donate mature plants, such as palms and other ornamental plants, or to provide them at a concessionary price. Please contact Mr. Vincent Lai or John Hanley at the Ministry of Tourism for further details. In terms of our heritage sites, work on the perimeter fence at New River is nearing completion. The target completion date is the 9th of April, and that work includes a wire fence, stone walls, and 2 main gates. Landscaping upgrades will begin as soon as fencing is completed. The ministry thanks the general public for its patience. Repairs have also commenced at our artisan village, just below where we are now. Minor structural work, as well as repainting of all the units, will take place over the next several weeks. The Nevis Tourism Authority, it launched its Just Be, J-U-S-T-B-E, Just Be wellness campaign, which includes a captivating video and digital brochure. The hashtag being used via social media is Just Be Nevis. And the video serves as a vehicle to showcase the distinctive aspects of the destination and targets the growing health and wellness visitor section. The campaign has garnered the interest of international publications, Breaking Travel News and Travel Trade Gazette, with captivating coverage to encourage British travelers to just be in Nevis. Along with the wellness video and brochure, the NTA hosted a webinar via TA Connect, which had over 280 participants registered. The NTA also attended the UK trade show, Unite Caribbean. That show, which was hosted virtually this year, provided the opportunity to have key conversations with over 25 tour operators with interest in Nevis. The Nevis Tourism Authority CEO, Jadine Yard, was interviewed by international entertainment publication Variety concerning the film industry here in Nevis. Variety has over 17 million monthly unique users. Nevis was also featured recently in the Telegraph, and the Telegraph would have done an article on Nevis and about films, and also an article in Nevis about the best restaurants on the island of Nevis. And so we thank the Telegraph, we thank Variety. We're getting good exposure for our little island, and we thank those hard-working individuals at the Nevis Tourism Authority. Pressing on to the Ministry of Culture, Youth, Sports, Community Development, the Department of Sports honored 5 deserving women for their contribution to the development of sports in Nevis on the occasion of International Women's Day. The 5 honorees were Maritza Williams, Athletics, Lydia Claxton, Netball, Giovanni Manners Hendrickson, Administration and Community Sports, Terry Andrews, Special Olympics, Shakima Wanda Parry France, basketball. And we say congratulations to the awardees. The event was hosted at the Jessups Community Center. The Ministry of Social Development would wish to salute all employees of the Social Services Department on the occasion of World Social Workers Day, which was celebrated on March 16th. To commemorate that day, an award ceremony was held at the Jessups Community Center to acknowledge the generous contributions made over the years by corporate partners and also to recognize members of staff who had been with the department for over 10 years. Corporate awardees were the Social Security, Development Bank, Nevis Cooperative Credit Union, Bank of Nevis Limited, Best Buy Supermarket, TDC City Drug Store, Sweet or Savory, and Marcel's Structural Metalworks. We congratulate all of those corporate sponsors and partners. The staff awardees were Sandra Maynard Morton, Lisa Brown, Anesta Maynard Wallace, Sandrine Caesar, Isilma Wilkinson, Janice Mills, Esther Jeffers, Miriam Richards, Brioni Dorr, Angela Challenger, Gloria Morton, Yvette Inglis, Olivia James Stanley, Elrose Arthurton, and Juliet Daniel. Again, we congratulate all of the awardees and wish them continued good health and strength as they serve us in social services. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations World Water Day was celebrated on the 22nd, and the Honorable Spencer Brand, our Minister of Water Services, gave an address as part of the celebrations for the day under the theme, Valuing Water. And nobody could be more qualified to give that address than he, because he has done so much for water and water security here on the island of Nevis. Also, by way of public notice, the Nevis Water Department has relocated to the Solomon Arcade in the heart of Charlestown, and we did that during the week of March 15th. We'll continue to encourage persons, entities, and business who are in arrears to settle all outstanding debts with the Nevis Water Department as soon as possible. Your full cooperation and understanding will be greatly appreciated as we try to improve the services to the general public. There has been some complaints about people being disconnected, having their water disconnected. I am urging again our people not to use COVID-19 as an excuse, but to be responsible. Let me say that again. Not to use COVID-19 as an excuse, but to be responsible. If COVID-19 has not impacted you in the sense that you have not lost your job, your income has been preserved, why aren't you paying your bills? Simply going around and joining a chorus that things are hard as an excuse for not paying your bills is being irresponsible. If it is that you are having a difficulty, then we continue to take a posture of asking people to come in, whether it's to NEVLEC, it's to the water department, and have a conversation to see what we can do for you. But we cannot continue a situation where people who can pay are refusing to pay, because what that means is that we then become unable to provide the service. And all of us know, if the water tap is turned on and there's no water, what a nuisance that is, and we're seeking to avoid that. So please, go in and pay your bill. And if you're having a difficulty paying your bill, go in and have a conversation, because that is the directive that the government has given to these departments to ensure that our people are treated in a way that shows empathy. But that ought not to be an excuse for our people to refuse to pay when we know they can pay. And the reason I'm speaking in this way is because I've seen the list of persons who owe thousands and thousands of dollars for water. And I've said to you, the members of the press, before, if you saw the list, you would cry with me. So when I hear sometimes the argument, oh Lord, these poor people, I can't really answer the way I want to answer, because I would start to list out some names and ask if they fall into that category of poor people. Them is not poor people, them is bad-minded people that don't want to pay their bills. And when they don't pay their bills, the ordinary people suffer because we cannot deliver the service to people. I know sometimes people get upset with me the way I talk, but I talk blunt so everybody could understand me. Everybody could understand me. A lot of row going around about poor people and Lord, look what they're doing to poor people. When you see the list of persons, members of the press, you will cry with me. And that is why I come here and I ask people, be responsible and do the right thing. And if indeed you're having difficulty, because yes, there are people who are having difficulty, come forward. Have a conversation. And let us see what we can work out for you. Because we must deal with our people with empathy, but equally, for those who are exhibiting that bad-minded trait and being irresponsible and not wanting to pay their bills when they can, we're asking them to come in and pay. I'm not going to get in because that is always murky waters of people's priorities. Because some people, every weekend they're at the fete. The nails and the hair and the shoes and the clothes always have to be on point. But they not pay water. Not paying electricity. Not only that, some people ensure that the phone is always in working order. Digicel and Flow get their money first. They ensure that the internet at home is always connected because that's what they use. But they're not paying water. They're not paying electricity. And I always find it amusing because I say, what is the value of paying Flow TV regularly and paying Digicel regularly for your cable service at home, but never cut you off because you're not paying electricity? Or you could use TV without electricity? But that is the thinking. And you know why they pay Flow and Digicel first? Because Flow and Digicel don't make joke. Minute you don't pay, you get cut off. Government now, people say, man, we're going to spend the $150 and go on the boat ride instead of paying. They're not going to cut me off. Or if they cut me off, I go on Facebook and say, what a wicked government, cut off poor people. That has been the thinking. And I'm asking our people just to be responsible. Please. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the end of my statement, and I invite your questions. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning to you,
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Jarvis Brown, Van Radio. Just have a few questions, sir. Could you shed some light on whether or not the government evicted Dr. Daly from the lands in question at Cades Bay without proper procedure? And part B to that question is that, is it possible that you can address this said issue on this evening on your program at Van Radio, so that the public who has concerns about that may be afforded the opportunity to ask you certain questions, sir? As it relates to the vaccination, are you at liberty to provide the nationalities of the individuals or the numbers pertaining to nationalities as it relates to the vaccination process? And lastly, sir, as it relates to those that are in quarantine pertaining to the 8 U.S. nationals who breached quarantine, sir. In relation to that, we understand that those 40 persons who were quarantined, we understand that some of them were seen in Charleston as of late. So could you provide some, whether that has been confirmed or whether it's true? And those are my questions, sir. Thank you.
Well, I start where you ended because I have not had any such report of persons in quarantine being seen in Charlestown. I would hope that if that is so, that persons would report those individuals to the necessary authorities, to the task force, and or to the police. We obviously have to be vigilant, all of us, and I would hope that those individuals have not been themselves reckless. A reckless event put them in that position, but they should not respond by themselves being reckless. So I would hope that is not so. I have not had any such reports. In terms of nationalities of those vaccinated, we have not taken that information, so we would not know. Our position is that whoever is here should be vaccinated, and so we have opened the vaccination process to nationals and non-nationals alike. So that is not a question that we ask people. I can tell you, though, from the reports that we have had, is that the expat community appears to have been the community that has taken up the vaccines in the largest numbers. They were the first in line to get vaccinated. And so the irony is that our government is providing vaccines free, and the people who are first in line are not nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis who continue to ask questions about what is in the vaccine. The people who are stepping up to the plate are the non-national community. And so certainly they are seeing something which it appears that we ourselves are not seeing, and they're getting vaccinated. So while our people sit back, others are jumping to the front of the line and ensuring that they get vaccinated. You asked me to address an issue on Von Radio this evening. The On the Mark show is a big show. We address big issues, and so persons who would want an issue to come, they would no doubt raise it. I have myself no particular inclination to talk about any particular matter. It is a show that flows, and so we'll see how that goes. So I'm not making a commitment. We'll see what the audience has to say, because as you know, it is a show which is open for calls coming in, so the public can participate as they see fit. In relation to an eviction from lands at Cades Bay, I'm not aware that there was an eviction because our research demonstrated that the lands, there was never any tenancy. One would certainly have to be in some tenancy or lease or other rental arrangement if one is to be evicted. The information that we have garnered thus far is that the particular individual whom you have mentioned would have occupied some lands at Cades Bay, and we do not know on what basis, because we found no documentary evidence, no letter, no posted pad, no anything from anyone in relation to that occupation. The gentleman has had a lawyer write to the government to say that he was given, assumedly, because he has not presented any paper, oral or verbal permission by Mr. Sam Powell, now deceased, who he said at the time was Deputy Director, I think, of Agriculture. And that is the permission that was given, way back in 1998, I think the time was. Suffice it to say that the Ministry of Agriculture is firmly of the view that no activity has occurred on that land for over 8 years. And in fact, there was a lady next door, a local entrepreneur, who built a restaurant. And I'm advised that that restaurant took just over 3 years to be completed, because her husband was the one doing the construction, and that the lands in question which border her property, that those lands were overgrown. In fact, in November last year, 2020, the lady cried out to the government for assistance. She said that she was concerned about security because she had seen some movements one night which caused her to be concerned about whether her business place was secure. And in November last year, we therefore would have sent the necessary heavy equipment to clear the said lands to enhance the security for this businesswoman. And I gather that when the lands were cleared in November last year was when the good gentleman showed up to say these are his lands. So the information, therefore, that we have garnered from agriculture, from land and housing, from the agencies that deal with land, and the Ministry of Lands, is that whatever activity used to occur on the land many years ago, that activity had ceased, and that in recent times there had been no activity at all, and that the activity only then recommenced in November of last year when the lands were cleared in response to a lady's concern about the overgrown nature of the lands and for her own security purposes. Apparently then, the gentleman rushed onto the lands and started to put down posts and claimed that basically it was his land. The gentleman was written to formally by the government's lawyers and asked not to trespass on the land since he could show that he had nothing in relation to these lands. The gentleman responded through his lawyers and indicated not only was he the occupier of the lands, but that he was now the owner of the lands, and that his lawyers will be applying to the court for a title so that he could claim and take ownership of the lands on the basis, he says, that he did not, and the letter said, I have not paid any rent, I don't have a lease, but I've been in occupation, and I will now be claiming the lands as my own. And that was something that I certainly as Premier cannot countenance. I'm saying here today that it could be my sister, it could be my brother, that I cannot countenance anybody seeking to own government land for which they have not paid. And I don't believe anybody could support that position. And that was a position taken in writing. Since there was no lease, there was no tenancy, as I said, I don't know that there could have been any eviction. The lands were simply abandoned, so far as the evidence shows. And in any event, some young people would have approached the government and asked for lands to farm, and they were provided with a portion of those lands. It is after the government went, as we're doing for all farmers, to clear the lands, to plow and prepare the lands, that I gather the gentleman showed up again and some type of altercation emerged. Notwithstanding, I have said at the outset of this press conference that we must condemn any acts of criminality against anybody. And we must condemn any acts of vandalism against anybody. But we have also to ask our people to conduct themselves lawfully, decently, and properly. Because we have farming going on at Cades Bay, we have farming going on at Potworks, we have farming going on at New River, we have farming, whereas we have farming going on at Prospect. We have lots of farming happening on Nevis. We have backyard farmers, we have commercial farmers. I'm told yesterday, informally, that we have over 70 registered farmers on the island. We have animal farmers, we have fisher folk. And nobody else seems to have any confusion. Nobody else. So, what has happened here is terribly unfortunate. But we would invite people out there who are occupying government land, as the minister said in the parliament yesterday, please come in and regularize. A lot of people have been occupying land, they have no lease, they have no arrangement. We understand that. Come in and regularize. That has been the position of the government. And that is why, as you go along Long Point and all of that, all those folks over there now have their proper documentation. Come in and regularize. The rent might only be a peppercorn rent, but come in and regularize. That way, you have your piece of paper. Because I'm told that the individuals involved in this back and forth, that they ended up in front of the police. And the police would have asked, well, what is, present something to show us. You're right. One was able to present a document. The other said, he has nothing. So what is the police supposed to do? What I find instructive, and I checked again as recently as last evening, late last evening, is that it appears that there has now developed a practice in our island where when things happen, people go to social media with it. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, that is their choice. But certainly, members of the press, I would hope that you would agree with me that the agency charged with investigating crime is the police. Not Facebook, not Mark Zuckerberg, the police. And it has to be a matter of concern that with all the talk of a crime, a terrible crime having been committed, that no report has been filed with the police up to last night. I don't know if one was filed this morning, but up to last night, no report. So at this point, the police don't even have in their records a notation that a crime has occurred. So you must ask yourself again, with all the noise and the sound and fury, if we are serious about preventing this type of behavior, and this behavior is criminal behavior, should the police not have been the first point of contact? Called, invite, as I have invited, anybody with information, please to assist the police and bring these culprits to justice? No. No report to the police. The report was made to Facebook. So, it will be for the members of the press to seek to unravel that. I believe that as far as I'm concerned, as Premier of Nevis, I condemn any attacks, any vandalism, any criminality against anyone. We have no place here for it. And this is the third allegation that we've had in recent months of farmers in particular having implements or crops destroyed. And whatever the motivation might be for it, I'm simply saying it is unacceptable. And I'm encouraging those who suffer damage such as this to go to the police and to allow the police to do their work. and to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice. And I'm equally encouraging members of the public who know something to say something. That is as much as I could do, Mr. Jarvis, from where I sit. I encourage our people to do what is right. And I also encourage our people not to seek out confrontation when no confrontation is necessary, but to do what is right. If you know that you are on government land and you have no papers, you have nothing, well, go into the government. We're encouraging farming, we're encouraging agriculture. But if you have government land that you are occupying and the government land is covered with bush for years and years and not under cultivation, and you have young people crying out for a piece of land to farm, what you must do? What must the government do? And I think that sometimes we need to take the emotion out of things and look at things in a practical and sensible way and say, what is a government supposed to do? I have a piece of land here, which is fertile land, sitting down, covered for years with bush. So much so that I have to get it cleared for security purposes because people are concerned. If the land was being farmed, the young lady, she couldn't have been concerned about the security. She'd be looking over some lovely peppers and corn and crops. This bush was there. That's why the lady was concerned. And whilst you have government land wasting time, you have young people who are saying, I want something to do. COVID is upon us. Jobs are hard. Let me go out there and by the sweat of my brow eat bread. And the government is trying to help people. So a group of youngsters come to us and they say, we're looking at a piece of land. You have a piece of land there sitting down, nothing doing. All the infrastructure is over there ready. Cades Bay is a farming area. And you look around this particular parcel and you realize that others are there. I hope he doesn't mind me calling his name. Mr. Daniel Atherton is an example. He had lands. Mr. Atherton did what he needed to do. He came, he spoke to the government. And as far as I know, he has now purchased the lands. He has his title for them. So clearly other people in the area saw the need and the relevance to regularize their position. And they have done so. Some, on the other hand, appear to me to want confrontation. And there's no need for that. There's absolutely no need for that. When we granted concessions, Mr. Jarvis, for agriculture, when we granted concessions for construction, there was no question on the paper which party you support. Everybody got it. Everybody who came forward benefited. It was not a political party thing. We're talking about how we get the island restarted, how we provide relief to our people. When NEVLEC provided relief, when Water Department provided relief, when Solid Waste provided relief, when Land and Housing provided relief, we never asked which party people support. So now I hear all this chat about politics. About politics, and you wonder sometimes if those who are talking about politics aren't the ones who are seeking to inject politics into a situation which, in my view, reasonable people would have come forward and said, listen, here's the position. Can I offer to purchase the lands? Can I offer to regularize a lease for the lands? I am now ready to restart after 8 years, something with the lands. No, none of that. So I ask the question again, what is the government supposed to do? Because the lands have been leased now to a group of youngsters from the St. Thomas's area who are saying that they want something to do and they're serious about getting involved in agriculture. We like to condemn young people. We like to say they're involved in all kinds of things. But here's a group who's saying, I want to do something positive, earn something for my family, and provide food for the people of Nevis. And we ought to tell them we're sorry, we have no land available when we have land sitting down, unused and covered in bush. Now, I can't eat bush. And I'm sure you can't eat bush. So we need people who are serious about agriculture, not people who want to use agriculture to create politics and create political confusion in the country. And I'm here standing today, and I don't care what names I'm called, that is not my issue. In a democracy, everybody is entitled to their opinion. But I'm here standing today to say, so long as I'm Premier of Nevis, nobody is just going to walk in and take government land. If you want to buy the land, come and talk to us. If you want to lease the land, come and talk to us. But don't write me no letter to say that you will be claiming the land as your own when you know and you admit you've never paid a red cent. I can't justify that. And I would be remiss in my duty and responsibility to the people of Nevis if I were to justify that. I wouldn't do it for myself. In fact, the minister said yesterday of lands, and I admire him for that because he has said from the moment he became Minister of Lands back in 2013, so long as Alexis Jeffers is Minister of Lands, no member of government or their family will get any government land. Let me say it again. He came and he said, so long as he's Minister of Lands, no member of government, the cabinet, or their family will get any government land. Because there is, I believe, a sort of risk of us sitting down in cabinet and starting to carve up. Wow, you take 2 acres over Caseberry, I'm going to take 2 acres down Hanley's Road. How much you want? You want something over Prospect? You take that. We have seen it in the past, let us remember. House and land. House and land. House and land. And we have said that we must never go down that road again. And that is what you see here at work. A principled position. If you have government land and you're possessing and occupying government land, please, I'm asking you, come in and regularize your position. I don't see nothing is wrong with that. Come in and regularize your position. If you want to buy it, come in and offer to buy it. If you want to lease it and get a proper lease document, come in. But come in. Don't start to go around, you have no paper, you have nothing, and then you start to make noise. And for God's sake, let us in our country seek conciliation and compromise as opposed to confrontation and confusion. So, that is as much as I can say on the particular matter.
Good morning, Monique Washington, St. Kitts Nevis Observer newspaper. Mr. Premier, can we get an update on the new wing of the hospital as it relates to the progress, the projected opening date, and has the project been able to stay on budget? As it relates to the Nevis Trust and Corporate Service Provider Bill 2021 that was ready yesterday, Section 8 of that bill, how will this section impact existing businesses that are registered here but are not operating here or have a physical place of operation? Is the government willing to take the risk of losing the business if they are unable to have a physical place of operation on the island? As it relates to the vaccine, children under the age of 18 are not required to take the vaccine. But will the island have enough vaccine for the youths that will be turning 18 this year and next year and who wish to take the vaccine? Now, a couple months ago, the Rest Haven property was cleared to attract investors. Can you give us an update as to has it attracted any investors, and if there are any plans for the property if there is no investors that are interested in that property? And the last question, can we get an update on how alive the Wyndham Hotel is, and if or when we will see some sort of movement on that project? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Monique, for your questions, as always. Update on the hospital. I confess that I didn't get an update prior to coming here, but the last update I had, which I believe was about 3 weeks ago, was that the physical construction is practically at an end. And we are now, let me go back, sorry, I don't want to be misquoted. The physical construction insofar as the exterior is concerned, the shell, the walls and roof and all of that is pretty much at an end. We are now moving to the more delicate stage, which is the internal configuration. And we have agreed to hire a consultant on that aspect of things. Because what we are being advised by the experts is that a hospital has to flow in a particular way. So this room has to be next door to that room and that kind of thing. So we are now engaged in that. I'm told that the project is on stream. We had some hiccups, as you know, due to COVID. The last update I had, as I said, which was about 3 weeks ago, was that we are probably going to be another 12 months before we can speak about any type of end for that project. So we're looking at another 12 months or so, because we, of course, have to outfit the interior, we have to get equipment, and we have to do all that. So it is an extensive project, naturally. It is much larger than the existing hospitals. Even though we say it's the expansion, the truth is it's bigger than the existing hospital. It's a massive building, I think well over 40,000 square feet. So it is really a significant leap forward insofar as healthcare is concerned. I promise that I will get more information on it, more detailed information for you, but I didn't have that with me today. Section 8 of the bill yesterday, yes, we are now saying that those operating and licensed in terms of financial services must have a physical presence here. That is a regulatory issue. It is a compliance issue. But it's also important, I think, if we're going to generate meaningful jobs from the industry. What we have found is that in some instances, people are just putting up a brass plate, as they call it, on a wall, on a building. And we're saying to them that that is no longer good enough. Now remember, these are not what we call the offshore companies. These are the LLCs and IBCs, because those naturally don't have a place of business here. These are the registered agents, the trusts, like, again, Morningstar Holdings, Trident Trust, whatever the names are. Those are those entities. So we're saying if you're a licensed entity in Nevis to provide this service, let me try to answer it a different way. If you come to Nevis and you ask the authorities here to license you to provide corporate services from Nevis, then we don't expect that you will have your offices in Gibraltar or in Malta or in Cyprus, and sitting down in Cyprus, renting space, employing people, but you're advertising online that you are a registered agent in Nevis and you could form companies for them in Nevis. What is Nevis getting out of that? Other than the registration fees for the company. Nobody in town getting any rent, no employees here, none of that. So we are trying to see how we can guard against that by saying to people, listen, when you come, just like the offshore banks, international banks, they must have a place of business here. Must. If you can't identify that, then the answer is no. So there is a risk, like you say, that some may say, well, it's not worth it. But we think that there's a greater risk of having people having no presence here but offering our services and our products and saying that they're licensed by us to do so. So we'll have to see where it goes, but that is the thinking behind it. And the industry, remember, money would have been involved in this legislation. This was a consultative process. So I am hopeful that the industry itself would have seen these provisions and would have had no difficulty with them. Vaccines, you asked a good question. Those who are turning 18 this year, next year, and the answer is yes, we will certainly try to have vaccines available. The idea now is for us to get a rapid vaccination, mass vaccination campaign, get us to the threshold, and then obviously we'll have to have vaccines continually available, just as we do now for other diseases such as mumps and measles and tetanus, etc. We have those vaccines available. The Rest Haven property, you say we cleared it to attract investors. That was not the reason we cleared it. We cleared it because it was overgrown and that it was a health risk. And certainly we've been looking to attract investors. I have not said much on it, but we do have an investor who has come forward, and we currently have a memorandum of understanding with that investor to develop there a particular development, a mixed-use development. As I said, I have not, because we have not yet concretized things, and I don't want to say too much on it until I have something tangible to report. But yes, we are looking to see what we can do there. Bearing in mind that the big problem we have at Rest Haven is that we still owe the previous owners. So we still have to find the money. Rest Haven was compulsorily acquired by the Nevis Island administration, then led by the Honorable Joseph Parry, some years ago, but never paid for. They took it, never paid for it. Since we have been in office, the interest has been piling on. So what was assessed at, I think, about $6 million is now up to over $10 million that we have to find to pay for less than 2 acres of land, which is Rest Haven. Bad decisions, when they're taken, have consequences. And so this decision to acquire that property with no plan for it, just to acquire it, and no payment. And I remember that was a hallmark of the previous government, They acquired land all over Nevis, never paid for any. So when we got into government, some of the lands we gave back, asked the people, beg them pardon, and tell them, please take back your land. And other lands, we have been struggling to find the money to pay for. West Haven is one of those. So it's not just an easy thing of saying attract an investor. We still have millions of dollars that are owed to the previous owners of West Haven. So I hope I've answered your question. In relation to Wyndham, I have no update. I have not spoken to the folks. The last letter I got from them, which was I think about 2 months ago, they had asked for an extension, indicating that they had been delayed by COVID. And so they had asked for, I think, a 1-year extension on the agreements that we had with them. And we granted that extension because we understood that people were not able to travel. Beyond that, I don't have an update. As far as they have advised, they're still interested in doing the project, but have been delayed because of COVID-19. Any other questions?
Good morning, Devon Cornelius, Win FM. Is the NIA contemplating to have Culturama this year? Secondly, can you provide an update on the status of the one and only resort? As Premier of Nevis, can you provide an update on the investigation of the destruction of crops in mid-January of this year, as well as livestock in cotton ground? Also, having been made aware of the recent incident where a farm was destroyed in Catesby, will the authorities launch an investigation on that matter? Can you provide an update on the number of households affected by NEVLEC and Water Department disconnections? And what is the status of the wind farm? I've noticed that some of the turbines will seem not to be working. Also, will the quarantine protocol remain in place for people entering St. Kitts and Nevis who have been fully vaccinated? Thank you.
Mr. Cornelius, thank you very much for your questions. Let me start at the top. I was trying to make a quick note. Culturama, I think that the Minister of Culture has indicated that they are consulting. It is, however, doubtful that we will have Culturama in its traditional sense this year. And more than likely, what we will have is a virtual Culturama, the way they did the virtual sugar mass in St. Kitts last Christmas. It is more than likely that that is how we will have to go, because Culturama, by now, we are about to enter into April, would have been in full planning mode if we were to execute it at the usual time at the end of July, early August. So I suspect that what we will end up with is a virtual event, but I know the Minister of Culture and his team are still consulting. Mr. Cornelius, I will certainly bring more information to you as I have it. In relation to the hotel project that is proposed for the Indian Castle area, I only this morning on my way here asked for an update on that. I'm told that things are progressing nicely, that the plans now have been submitted to the planning department, the construction plans, the concept drawings have been submitted, that the financing aspect, which was always the delay in relation to that, regrettably the final part of that is still delayed because the financiers are out of the UK and the assessor who needs to come in has to travel in from the UK, and they're of course concerned about somebody coming in and having to quarantine for 14 days. So that has delayed us, especially now. It is even worse with the UK variant that they have pretty much, well, not they have, with the country and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has put a ban, as you know, a travel ban on persons from the UK. So that's a little fly in the ointment at this point, but I'm told that the other aspects of it, as of this morning, are moving forward. The investigation about the crops and damage that we saw to a farm in Cotton Ground and another farm in Cades Bay some time ago, I do not have an update on that. I would imagine the police are investigating, but they have not given me an update as to where that investigation is. The investigation, the most recent event that I think has taken up a bit of time at this press conference, you said, would an investigation be launched? I would hope so. I have, of course, asked as Premier that a full investigation be done. but investigations of this nature would anticipate that the victim of the crime would make a report to the police to initiate the investigation. As Premier of Nevis, I would have only seen what everybody else would have seen, which is a video that was circulated. I do not know anything further than that video. So my thing would be to ask persons affected to make the necessary report to the police so that the police can do their job. So the short answer is absolutely, I think an investigation needs to happen. But an investigation cannot happen in a vacuum. An investigation has to be initiated, in my respectful view, by a report being filed with the police. Because if the police have no information that a crime has been committed because no report has been filed to them, then where do we go from there? But certainly I agree with you that all of these matters should be investigated. I do not, again, you've asked me some tough questions, and I hate to answer this way, but I do not have an update on the number of households you asked affected by neglect and water. But I will undertake to get you that information. If you can get to me afterwards, I will try and get to neglect and water and find out. The wind farm, again, I am not myself certain what is happening there. I'm told that they continue to provide power to Nevlek, I think just about 1 megawatt or thereabouts of power. Part of what I'm gathering over there is that, of course, the wind farm is a private venture, and we buy power from them. So part of what I'm understanding over there is a need for those who own the wind farm to do the necessary investment to ensure that it continues to produce power at an acceptable rate. Quarantine protocols. Will the Federation relax the quarantine? At this point, the information I have is the answer is no. That even if you're vaccinated overseas and you're coming in, that you will still have to quarantine for the moment. And the thinking behind that is that we have to ensure that our population gets to the necessary herd immunity. And once we get there, then we can open the doors in a much more comfortable and confident way. But for example, if you come in, and we have had one example, because I think one of our recent positive cases of COVID was somebody who had actually been fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. And they came in and they still developed COVID. So they were in that small percentile of people who still get the COVID with the vaccine. And certainly if we are not vaccinated, Mr. Cornelius, then to have those individuals out in the community means that we know are put at risk. And that is why, again, I urge our people, please, to go out. If you're listening to my voice now, put on your shoes and head to the closest clinic and get your vaccine.
Yeah, just a few more questions. How is the government planning to deal with the other 30% of the population not inoculated? And is the health infrastructure prepared for a possible community spread?
Again, excellent questions. Because we're told that the relevant threshold is 70%, that's the goal. We would love to get up to 85%. But remember as well that those under 18 are not to be vaccinated. Yeah? So let us say, for sake of argument, Nevis has 10,000 people. I'm just using a round number. And those under 18 account for 2,500 of those 10,000 people. It means that you remove those 2,500 already from the pool. But you still need to reach 70% of the 10,000. So essentially, you'll have to vaccinate nearly all of those remaining to get to the magic number that you're trying to get to. So I'm gathering from latest census results that those under 18 account for something like 27% of the population. And therefore, you have roughly 73 or thereabouts percent left. So to get to the 70%, you realize that nearly all of those 73% you would have to vaccinate. So we have work to do, and that is why I'm trying to enlist the media to help us in getting this done. We need to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And so the 30%, in any country, not everybody will be vaccinated. We have even here, we have people who are conscientious objectors. We have people like the Rastafarians who say they don't vaccinate. So we expect that in every community, not 100% will be vaccinated. But once you get up to the herd immunity, that magic level, then what you do there is prevent any threat of widespread disease and, of course, deaths. You say, how ready are we in relation to possible community spread? I think I would put that this way. All across the world, they've shown that nobody's ready. Even the richest countries in the world have not been ready. Italy, America, Brazil now is complaining, saying the hospitals are overrun. And so that is why we took a position, Mr. Cornelius, that the best approach was to prevent it getting in, meaning to lock the gate as tight as we could get it. And we face some stiff criticisms for it. People complain about quarantine. It's stupid. It's a nonsense decision, or you're locking up people for 14 days. But we took a decision, and not because not all comparisons are useful, but look across our region, where some started out with 3-day quarantine and 5-day quarantine. And look where they are now, and look where we are. So we took the hard decisions early, the unpopular decisions early. We spent the political capital that we had early. And I think our people, as a result, have remained relatively safe. So how prepared are we? We are as prepared as we can be in the circumstances. We, for example, here in Little Nevis, we prepared a whole facility in Prospect. If we had to isolate people, we allocated beds at the hospital in the event that we had to do that. We have, of course, quarantines, sites, potworks. So we have sought to make ourselves ready in getting testing equipment, PPE. But it's like when you buy insurance. You know, you buy life insurance, but you don't want a death. So you prepare yourself, but you don't really, you're hoping that you don't need it. You buy insurance on your car, but you're hoping you don't have an accident. So what we have done is we have invested in the infrastructure, hoping that we don't have to use it. And that's the best way I can use to answer you, Mr. Cornelius, to say that the best way we can guard against community spread is to get vaccinated and to get our people vaccinated. I hope you have got your vaccine already, and I hope you're encouraging the young people to go out and get their vaccines. Ms. Hewlett, you have...
Just making sure we're finished. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Premier. L.K. Hewlett, Department of Information. Can you give us some kind of snapshot as to how the NIA's agenda in terms of the recovery of the Nevis economy is going? And have you started receiving a paycheck yet? I think this marks a year now that you have not been paid for your services as Premier. So if you could give us an update on that.
All right. Thank you very much. In terms of our economic recovery, I have spent a little time today because I think it's important, because I think that as we grappled initially with what was certainly the health crisis of COVID, we are seeing the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel where that's concerned. But we have now a full-blown economic crisis. And in an economy that was so heavily dependent initially, 6 months I think they were closed from March or thereabouts until October, with our hotels closed initially. And even now they've reopened with the COVID-19, the quarantine restrictions which we just spoke about, etc. People are saying, I'm not going to travel there because I don't want to be in quarantine for 14 days. I want to go out and be at the beaches and enjoy myself. So we have pivoted some months ago from just looking at the health response to also looking at the economic response. And that is why we started out on this film industry path last year, which has now borne fruit. That is why we have sought to incentivize construction, which we are seeing bearing spectacular fruit right now. That is why we have invested in and provided seed money for small businesses, particularly for women and youth, and we see some good uptake there. That is why we have incentivized our farming industry to say to our livestock, our fisher folk, our crop farmers, that we will provide them with the necessary tools for them to produce more food, because one of the lessons, of course, we learned is that we could not any longer be dependent on food coming into the Federation every week. We had to find some way to feed ourselves. That is why we would have waived alien land holding licenses, the fee on the purchase of real estate, that is, existing buildings. We did that for 3 months. We have now, we did it for 3 months initially. We did it for an additional 3 months, which ends in March. And we are now looking, the Cabinet, at which of these concessions we might be able to extend. Incidentally, I should have announced, and this might be a good opportunity to announce, that the concessions on construction, the Cabinet has taken a decision to extend those until December this year. You'll recall that you could only get the concessions if you began construction, if you commenced construction by March 31st. We have now extended it to say that if you commence your construction by December this year, you can make yourself, you can get access to these concessions. So we think that what we're seeing in the construction industry is very encouraging, and we want to continue to stimulate that particular industry. I mentioned those financial services as well. You know that we have, during the height of this pandemic, we have licensed another international bank, which is shortly opening its doors. We have two that have, one that pre-existed, but we sanctioned the sale of that one, new investor, a second one that we licensed. We're told collectively they now employ well over 70 individuals in good paying jobs. Mr. MSR Media is employing 30-some odd locals, again, decent paying jobs. So we are not seeing anything that we could say is a huge single entity that's coming in to employ 500, 600 people. But, as the old people say, one fill basket. And we're trying to do the best we can with the hand that we've been dealt. I think that we have some excellent news that we hope will come. We have some new restaurants that are going to be opening their doors soon. We have a new business that's going to be opening. I think that they're going to be involved in the manufacture of beer and other spirits here on the island. We are going to have those conversations when things get closer to the time, because I don't like to talk and then members of the press come back and say, oh, you remember you had said so, and that hasn't happened. Monique likes to do me that all the time, so I'm always careful not to overpromise. But we have some good news, I think, that's going to come, so I look forward to that. In relation to me and salary, you're correct that it's now been over a year. I have not collected a salary. I have still not collected a salary because I have said that I believe that as Premier of Nevis, I have to continue to show some solidarity with our people. I recognize that our people are still struggling, and while this is symbolic, a symbolic gesture, I think it's an important symbolic gesture. So my salary is still in abeyance, and by abeyance I don't mean that I'm stockpiling it to collect it all at once. It's gone. I'm not collecting it. So I'm not collecting my salary as Premier of Nevis, and I did say that I wouldn't collect it until we could say that this pandemic was behind us. So I'm hopeful that we can say that soon, but until then, the position remains the same. So it's certainly something to which I'm entitled, but something which I have decided to forego at this time, over this period, because I think that there's real difficulty in the community. And as Premier and Minister of Finance, I can tell you there's real difficulty in terms of government finances. And so I think that leadership must lead, and that is what I'm seeking to do. Are there any other questions? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you again for being here. For members of the press, thank you for always giving me of your time. And we certainly will look forward to another press conference. I hope I was able to answer most of your questions. Those that I wasn't able to answer, I will undertake to provide some information. Thank you for all those who tuned in. Thank you for being a part of this. And we propose to be back here again shortly to bring another of these monthly press conferences. Thank you, and may God bless all of you.